President Clinton asks for 5 minutes of your time tonight to say how he would cut taxes and balance the budget over the next 10 years. Reports from Rita Braver and Bob Schieffer. The FBI says James Nichols was talking about blowing up the Oklahoma City Federal Building 7 years ago. Jim Stewart on the investigation. And Eric Ingberg's reality check. Lonely at the top? Not if you work for Uncle Sam.
1 assistant secretary. 1 principal deputy assistant secretary. 4 deputy assistant secretaries.
This is the CBS Evening News with Dan Rather.
Good evening. The federal budget battle, the fight over the nation's deficit, is headed for prime-time television tonight. President Clinton will address the nation later this evening to outline his 10-year plan for balancing the federal budget. The president sees the Republican budget as a radical extremist plan to shred programs helping the neediest to pay for tax breaks for the wealthiest. Republicans plan to respond tonight. Rita Braver has our preview.
It was Vice President Gore who put out the word. In a highly unusual conference call, he asked the major networks for 5 minutes at 9 o'clock Eastern Time so that President Clinton could announce his retooled 1996 budget plan. The vice president said Mr. Clinton found Republican budget resolutions totally unacceptable, and if passed, they'd lead to a standoff that would shut government down. Mr. Gore said the president cannot stand by and watch a train wreck, today's metaphor of choice at the White House.
He wants to make sure that we do not run into a train wreck at the end of this year, and he felt it was very important to assert his leadership.
The president will propose $130 billion in cuts in Medicare spending, about half of what Republicans want. He'll tie it to health care reform measures, including new insurance rules limiting exclusions for pre-existing conditions. He'll also call for less than half the cuts Republicans want in welfare, about $35 billion. He'll propose cuts of 20 to 30% in most government programs other than Social Security. There will be exemptions for education and job training or programs like Head Start that help the very poorest Americans. He will call for a cut of about $25 billion in tax breaks and subsidies for corporations, and he'll stick with his own $60 billion middle-class tax cut plan.
The president here is making an offer to the Republicans. We can work together if we are in a position to give a little to achieve a very worthy and important outcome.
But the president wants to achieve a balanced budget in 10 years instead of the 7 Republicans favor. And tonight he'll try to persuade Americans that his way will be easier on the middle class and the poor. Dan?
Rita Braver at the White House, thanks. No surprises in the hostile reception already pouring out tonight from Republicans in Congress, but some Democrats are bashing the president for their own reasons. More from Chief Washington correspondent Bob Schieffer.
Even before they saw it, Republicans dismissed the president's plan as a last-minute political ploy.
I see this as a totally political effort. I think they've got some numbers out there, surveys. It's politics.
Even more caustic than Dole was the Senate's Republican budget chief, who suspects the president may try to raise taxes under the guise of closing tax loopholes.
So mark me down as skeptical.
But all of that is to be expected. What is more interesting is the response from congressional Democrats, which ranged from silence to outright fury. David Obey of Wisconsin, the ranking Democrat on the House Appropriations Committee, issued a scathing statement tonight in which he said, quote, "I think most of us learned some time ago if you don't like this president's stand on an issue, you simply need to wait a few weeks. If you can follow this White House on the budget, you're a whole lot smarter than I am." What is going on is that congressional Democrats have been urging the president not to issue a detailed budget because they believe they are finally getting through to voters about just how harsh the Republican plan to balance the budget is going to be and how many segments of society are going to be affected. But the president rejected that advice, and tonight the White House and congressional Democrats are so far apart, Dan, that one joke going around up here is, well, everybody's been talking about somebody running for president as a third-party candidate next year. Maybe that somebody is going to be Bill Clinton.
Bob Schieffer on Capitol Hill. CBS News will cover the president's speech and the Republican response live starting at 9 Eastern Time tonight. A footnote this evening on the president's health. White House officials report one of the 1,500 people President Clinton shook hands with at Dartmouth College in New Hampshire over the weekend had meningitis. The risk to Mr. Clinton is said to have been minimal, but he has been given antibiotics as a precaution. a possible new line of investigation.